The massive white ship floated in the dark space between three warring worlds. Red crosses painted on its hull caught the light from distant stars. The ship was bigger than most cities, stretching for miles in every direction. This was the UHMS Sanctuary, and it was the most important hospital ship humans had ever built. Captain Lisa Morgan walked through the medical bays with steady steps. Her uniform was clean and pressed, but her eyes showed the tiredness of someone who had seen too much suffering. She had been commanding hospital ships for 15 years. The Sanctuary was her third ship, and by far the largest. The medical bay stretched out before her like a small town. Beds filled every available space. Some held humans with bandaged arms and legs. Others held aliens she had never seen before. There were the tall, blue-skinned Zephyrians with their 4 arms. Next to them lay the small, furry krill with their big black eyes. In the corner, a massive hegemony warrior sat on a reinforced bed, his gray skin covered in healing patches. Dr. Jake Phillips approached her with a tablet in his hands. He was a tall man with brown hair that was starting to turn gray at the edges. His medical coat had small stains from a long day of work. "Captain, we just received 30 more wounded from the battle near Kepler Station," he said. "Mostly burns and broken bones. Nothing we can't handle." Lisa nodded. "Any word on who they were fighting for?" "Mixed group," Jake replied. "Some Zephyrian Navy, some independent traders who got caught in the crossfire, and 2 hegemony scouts who were rescued by the traders. This was normal for the Sanctuary. The ship took in wounded from all sides of the war. It did not matter which side they fought for or what species they were. The ancient laws of space medicine said that hospital ships must help everyone. The Sanctuary followed these laws without question. They walked past a bed where Nurse Amy Carter was changing bandages on a krill soldier. The small alien was making soft clicking sounds, which meant it was in pain. Amy spoke to it in the krill language, her voice gentle and calm. "There, that should feel better soon," she said in their tongue. The krill's big eyes looked up at her with what might have been gratitude. It clicked once, which was their way of saying thank you. "How is your krill coming along?" Lisa asked Amy. Amy smiled. "Getting better every day. Dr. Phillips has been teaching me. Says it helps the patients heal faster when we can talk to them in their own language." This was why Lisa was proud to command the Sanctuary. Her crew did not just heal bodies, they healed the fear and loneliness that came with being hurt and far from home. It did not matter if that home was Earth or some distant alien world. Dr. Phillips led them to the next section. Here, the wounded were more serious. Machines beeped and hummed around beds where the most critical patients lay. A human soldier from the Earth Defense Force was unconscious, his chest rising and falling with the help of a breathing machine. Next to him, a Zephyrian officer was awake but could not move his legs. "Will he walk again?" Lisa asked quietly. "Hard to say," Jake replied. "Zephyrian spines are different from ours. We're still learning how to treat them. But Dr. Sarah Kim thinks there's a good chance. She's been working with their doctors to understand their biology better." They stopped at a bed where a massive hegemony warrior lay unconscious. His gray skin was covered in surgical scars, and his breathing was slow but steady. Lisa knew that hegemony warriors were the most feared fighters in the galaxy. They were bred for war and knew nothing but fighting. Yet here he was, just another patient who needed help. "His name is Gorthak," Jake said. "His ship was destroyed in the fighting near Vega Prime. He was floating in space for 6 hours before a rescue ship found him. Should have been dead, But these hegemony types are tough. Lisa watched the sleeping warrior. Has he said anything? Not much. When he woke up during surgery, he seemed confused about where he was, kept asking why we weren't torturing him or asking him questions. This was something Lisa had seen before. Many alien species did not understand why humans would help their enemies. To them, war was simple. You killed your enemies, or they killed you. The idea of helping wounded enemies made no sense to most of them. But humans were different. They had learned long ago that showing mercy was not weakness. It was strength. It took more courage to heal than to hurt, more wisdom to save lives than to take them. The captain and doctor continued their walk through the ship. They passed the children's ward, where young aliens of many species recovered from the wounds of war. Human doctors and nurses moved between the beds, speaking softly and offering comfort. Some of the children had never seen humans before, but they quickly learned to trust the gentle giants who took care of them. In the surgery wing, Dr. Sarah Kim was operating on a krill pilot whose ship had been shot down. The surgery had been going on for 4 hours. Sarah's hands moved with perfect precision as she repaired damage that would have killed the pilot within minutes. Her team worked around her like a well-trained dance, each person knowing exactly what to do. Lisa checked her watch. It was late in the ship's day cycle, but the sanctuary never slept. There was always someone who needed help, always another. Emergency coming in from the war zones. She made her way to the communications room, where Officer Ben Taylor was monitoring the emergency channels. Ships in distress called for help at all hours, and the sanctuary answered every call it could. "Anything new, Ben?" she asked. "Quiet night, Captain. Just the usual chatter from the war zones. Oh, and we got a thank you message from that Zephyrian cruiser we helped last week. Their wounded all made full recoveries." Lisa smiled. Messages like that made all the hard work worth it. They proved that what the sanctuary was doing mattered, that mercy and kindness could make a difference even in the middle of a war. She looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, fleets were fighting and people were dying. But here on the sanctuary, enemies became patience, and patience became proof that peace was possible. If only the rest of the galaxy could learn what her crew already knew. That healing was always better than hurting. The alarms started screaming at exactly 0347 ship time. Captain Lisa Morgan jerked awake in her quarters as the emergency lights bathed everything in red. She rolled out of bed and grabbed her uniform, pulling it on as she ran toward the bridge. The alarm pattern was one she had hoped never to hear. Incoming hostile ships. But that was impossible. The sanctuary was a hospital ship. It was protected by every treaty in the galaxy. No one attacked hospital ships. She burst onto the bridge, to find her crew already at their stations. Officer Ben Taylor was at the communications console, his face pale. "Captain, we have 12 ships dropping out of hyperspace. They're not responding to our identification signals." Lisa looked at the main screen. 12 dark ships hung in space like angry insects. She recognized the design immediately. Hegemony. Warships. But something was wrong. Their weapons were already charging, their targeting systems active. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies." The communication system crackled to life. "This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the United Human Medical Ship Sanctuary. We are a hospital ship operating under galactic medical neutrality treaties. Our Red Cross markings are clearly visible. Please respond." Silence. Dr. Jake Phillips arrived on the bridge, still wearing his surgical clothes. "Lisa, what's happening? We have patients in the middle of surgery." Before she could answer, the lead hegemony ship opened fire. The first blast hit the sanctuary's forward medical bay. The ship shuddered like a living thing in pain. Lights flickered and sparks flew from damaged systems. Lisa grabbed onto her chair as the artificial gravity wavered. "Shields up!" she shouted, but even as she said it, she knew it was wrong. Hospital ships were not supposed to have shields. They were not supposed to need them. "Captain, we don't have shields," Ben reminded her. "Medical ships aren't allowed to carry weapons or defensive systems under treaty law." Another blast hit them, this time near the children's ward. Lisa's heart stopped as she thought of the young alien patients who were sleeping there just minutes. "Go. All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We are under attack. Begin emergency evacuation procedures. Medical staff, get the patients to the escape pods. Everyone else, help them." The bridge filled with reports from all over the ship. Hull breaches in sections 7 and 12. Life support failing in the surgical wing. Emergency power only in the children's ward. Dr. Phillips was already running toward the door. "I have to get back to my patients," he said. "Jake." "Wait." Lisa started, but he was already gone. The attacks kept coming. Each blast was carefully aimed. The enemy ships were not trying to destroy the sanctuary quickly. They were taking their time, targeting specific areas: the medical bays, the escape pod launchers, the life support systems. They were being murdered slowly. "Ben, keep trying to contact them," Lisa ordered. "There has to be some mistake." But even as she said it, she knew there was no mistake. The hegemony ships were firing on a clearly marked hospital ship with full knowledge of what they were doing. Communications officer Amy Carter ran onto the bridge, blood running down her face from a cut on her forehead. "Captain, I managed to get through to the lead ship. You're not going to like what they said. Put it on speaker." The bridge filled with a harsh, grating voice speaking accented English. "Human medical ship. This is War Commander Thexvar of the Hegemony 4th Fleet. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Lisa grabbed the microphone. "War Commander, we are a hospital ship protected by Galactic Treaty. We have wounded from your own forces aboard. We are non-combatants operating under—" The alien voice cut her off with what might have been laughter. "Treaties are for the weak, human. Your mercy is your weakness. We do not recognize your hospital status. Surrender or die." Another blast rocked the ship. This one hit the main power core. The lights went out for several seconds before emergency power kicked in. Lisa tried again. "War Commander, we have hegemony wounded aboard this ship. Your own people. We are treating them, saving their lives." "Then they are weak too," came the cold reply. "Weak warriors deserve to die with weak enemies." The communication channel went dead. Lisa stared at the speaker in shock. In all her years commanding hospital ships, she had never encountered anything like this. Even the most brutal military commanders respected medical neutrality. It was one of the few things that all civilized species agreed on. But the hegemony was not acting civilized. "Captain," Ben called out, "I'm getting reports from all over the ship. Dr. Phillips and his team are trapped in Surgical Bay 3 with a dozen patients who can't be moved. The children's ward is cut off. And—" His voice broke. "The escape pod bay in Section 4 has been destroyed. There were 20 people trying to evacuate patients." Lisa closed her eyes for a moment. 20 people. Gone. Doctors, nurses, patients. All dead because they were trying to save lives. When she opened her eyes, they were hard as steel. "Amy, can you still transmit to Earth?" "The main transmitter is damaged, but I might be able to get a signal through using the emergency beacon." "Do it. Send everything. The attack records, the communications with the hegemony commander, everything. Make sure Earth knows what happened. Here. Amy's fingers flew over her controls. Captain, it's going to take a few minutes to compile all the data and boost the signal strong enough to reach Earth. Another blast hit them. This time, Lisa could hear the screaming of metal as the ship's hull began to tear apart. She looked around the bridge at her crew. They were all good people. They had joined the medical service to save lives, not to die in a pointless attack. But they were still at their posts, still doing their jobs, still trying to help others even as their own lives hung by a thread. Ben, how long until the hegemony ships finish us? Ben checked his instruments. At their current rate of fire, maybe 10 minutes. They're being very thorough. Lisa nodded. Amy, you have 10 minutes to get that message to Earth. Make it count. As the young officer worked frantically at her station, Lisa thought about Dr. Phillips and his team, still trying to save patients in a collapsing medical bay. She thought about the children who might never see their homes again. She thought about the alien warriors who had trusted humans to heal them, only to die because of that trust. The hegemony had made a terrible mistake. They thought human mercy was weakness. They thought compassion meant cowardice. They were about to learn how wrong they were. But first, Lisa Morgan and her crew had to do what they could to save as many lives as possible, even if it cost them their own, because that was what humans did. Communications Officer Amy Carter's hands shook as she worked at her damaged control panel. Sparks flew from broken circuits, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. The sanctuary was dying around them, but she had a job to finish. How? Much longer, Amy? Captain Lisa Morgan asked. Her voice was calm, but Amy could hear the tension underneath. 2 minutes, Captain. The signal booster is almost ready. Another blast hit the ship. The bridge tilted sideways as artificial gravity fluctuated. Amy had to grab her console to keep from falling. When the ship steadied, she saw that more warning lights were flashing red. Through the bridge windows, she could see the hegemony ships moving closer. They were taking their time, like predators playing with wounded prey. Their weapons charged and fired in a steady rhythm, each blast carefully aimed to cause maximum suffering. Message compilation complete, Amy announced. Beginning transmission to Earth Fleet Command. The signal would take hours to reach Earth, traveling through space at faster-than-light speeds. But the quantum burst transmitter could send huge amounts of data all at once. Everything that had happened here would reach home in one package. Video recordings of the attack. Audio of War Commander Thexvar refusing to recognize their hospital status. Sensor logs showing the exact time and location of each weapon strike. Medical records proving they had been treating wounded from all sides, including hegemony forces. Captain Morgan moved to stand beside Amy's station. Add a personal message from me, she said quietly. Amy's fingers moved over the controls. Ready to record, Captain? Lisa looked directly into the camera. Her uniform was torn and dirty, her face streaked with soot, but her eyes were clear and strong. This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the UHMS Sanctuary to Earth Fleet Command. We are under attack by hegemony forces led by War Commander Thexvar. They have refused to recognize our hospital status and are deliberately targeting medical facilities and evacuation routes. Another blast shook the ship. Lisa steadied herself and continued. I want it clearly understood that we followed all protocols. Our Red Cross markings were visible. We broadcast medical identification signals continuously. We had wounded hegemony warriors in our care, and we told them this. They did not care. The camera picked up the sound of explosions echoing through the ship's corridors. Somewhere in the distance, Amy could hear people screaming. The hegemony commander called our mercy a weakness. He said treaties were for the weak. He ordered us to surrender or die, knowing full well we were a hospital ship. Lisa paused, listening to reports coming through her earpiece. Her expression grew harder. They are now targeting escape pods carrying wounded patients. They are firing on medical personnel attempting evacuation. They have destroyed emergency shelters and cut off evacuation routes. Amy watched the captain's face and saw something she had never seen before. Lisa Morgan was one of the kindest people Amy had ever known. She had spent her life saving others, showing mercy to everyone. But now, anger was building behind her eyes like a storm gathering strength. I need Earth to understand what has happened here. This was not a military engagement. This was not an accident. This was a deliberate attack on non-combatants, on medical personnel, on the wounded and helpless. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered and went out for several seconds. They fired on our wounded, Lisa continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. They fired on our doctors. They showed no mercy to those who showed nothing but mercy. Amy could hear Dr. Phillips over the communication system, still trying to coordinate medical evacuations, even as the ship collapsed around him. She could hear Nurse Ben Taylor calling out instructions to help move patients who could not walk. Her crewmates were dying, but they were dying while trying to save others. The hegemony believes human compassion is weakness, Captain Morgan said, looking directly into the camera. They believe that because we choose to heal rather than hurt, we are easy targets. They believe that because we follow the laws of mercy, we will not defend ourselves. The ship shuddered as another section was destroyed. Amy could see on her monitors that the children's ward had just been hit. She thought of the young alien patients they had been caring for and felt tears running down her face. They are wrong, Lisa said, and now her voice carried a weight that Amy had never heard before. They have attacked the one thing that makes us most human, our willingness to help others, even our enemies. They have murdered doctors and nurses who spent their lives saving alien children. They have killed patients who trusted us to protect them. The captain stepped closer to the camera. Earth needs to know that we died doing what humans do best, saving lives. But Earth also needs to know that some lines cannot be crossed. Some attacks cannot be forgiven. Some enemies cannot be shown mercy because they have chosen to destroy mercy itself. Amy's console beeped. The transmission was ready to send. All of Earth would see this message, would know what had happened to the sanctuary and its crew. This is Captain Lisa Morgan signing off. Tell our families we died as we lived, helping others. And tell our fleet. She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than any shout. Tell our fleet that the hegemony has declared war on mercy itself. They wanted to see what humans do when pushed too far. They're about to find out. She looked at Amy and nodded. Amy pressed the transmission button. The message shot into space, carrying with it the death cries of the sanctuary and the promise of what was to come. Seconds later, the bridge exploded around them. Amy felt herself flying through the air as the blast wave hit. She landed hard against a bulkhead, pain shooting through her side. When she looked up, she saw Captain Morgan lying motionless near the ruined communications console. The hegemony ships were moving in for the final kill. Through the cracked bridge windows, Amy could see their weapons charging for one last massive strike. But the message was already gone, racing toward Earth at impossible speeds. Soon, Admiral Pete Harrison would be watching this recording. Soon, Earth Fleet Command would know what the hegemony had done. Soon, the hegemony would learn that there were worse things than human mercy. They would learn about human wrath. Amy closed her eyes as the final blast began. The last thing she heard was Dr. Phillips over the dying communication system, still trying to save one more patient, still showing mercy even as mercy itself was being murdered. The sanctuary died as it had lived, with compassion and courage. But its death would give birth to something the galaxy had never seen before, something that would make the stars themselves tremble. Admiral Pete Harrison was drinking his morning coffee when the universe changed forever. He sat in his office at Earth Fleet Command, watching the sunrise paint the sky in soft colors. It was a peaceful morning on Earth, and peace negotiations with several alien species were going well. After 3 years of war, it looked like the galaxy might finally find some rest. Then his communications officer burst through the door without knocking. "Admiral, we have an emergency transmission from the Vega sector," Lieutenant Karen Walsh said. Her face was white with shock. "You need to see this immediately." Pete set down his coffee cup and followed her to the main communications center. A dozen officers were already there, their faces grim. On the big screen, a message waited to be played. "It came in 20 minutes ago," Karen explained. "From the UHMS Sanctuary. It's bad, sir." Pete had known Captain Lisa Morgan for 8 years. She was one of the best hospital ship commanders in the fleet, calm under pressure and dedicated to saving lives. If she was sending emergency transmissions, something terrible had happened. "Play it," he ordered. The screen filled with Lisa Morgan's face. Her uniform was torn, her face dirty with smoke and blood. Behind her, explosions lit up the bridge in flashes of red light. "This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the UHMS Sanctuary to Earth Fleet Command. We are under attack by hegemony forces." Pete watched in growing horror as the message played out. The deliberate targeting of a hospital ship, the refusal to recognize medical neutrality, the murder of doctors and nurses trying to save lives. When Captain Morgan said her final words about the hegemony declaring war on mercy itself, Pete felt something cold settle in his chest. The screen went black. The communications center was silent. 20 veteran officers who had seen years of war stood without speaking, trying to process what they had just witnessed. "How many people were on the sanctuary?" Pete asked quietly. 2,043, Karen replied. "Medical staff, patients, and crew." Pete closed his eyes. 2,000 people. Doctors, nurses, medical technicians, wounded soldiers from a dozen different species who had trusted humans to heal them. All dead because they chose mercy over violence. "Sir," another officer spoke, up. "We're getting reports from our monitoring stations. The sanctuary's emergency beacon went silent 47 minutes ago." They were gone. All of them. Pete opened his eyes and looked around the room. These were good people, professional soldiers who understood the cost of war. But he could see anger building in their faces. This was not just another battle report. This was something else entirely. "Send word to all fleet commanders," he said, his voice steady and cold. "I want every ship captain, every base commander, every unit leader to see this transmission within the hour." "Yes, sir," Karen said. "What should we tell them?" Pete walked to the window and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, the hegemony was celebrating what they thought was a victory. They had no idea what was coming. "Tell them we're activating Protocol Omega," he said. The room went silent again. Protocol Omega was something that had never been used before. It was the complete mobilization of every human military asset in the galaxy. Every ship, every fleet, every soldier, total war. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Bob Stevens spoke carefully. "Protocol Omega authorizes the use of any force necessary to eliminate a threat to human survival. Are you sure?" They attacked a hospital ship, Pete cut him off. They murdered doctors. They killed wounded patients who couldn't defend themselves. They declared war on the fundamental principles of civilization. He turned back to face the room. Yes, Commander. I'm sure. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Messages went out to every human military installation in the galaxy. On Earth, reserve fleets that had been in mothballs for years received activation orders. Colony defense forces abandoned their posts to join the gathering storm. Captain Ron Baker of the battleship UES Retribution received his orders while his ship was docked at Mars Naval Station. He had been planning to take shore leave after 6 months of patrol duty. Instead, he found himself watching the Sanctuary's final transmission with his senior officers. The bridge of the Retribution was silent as Captain Morgan's last words echoed through the speakers. When the message ended, Ron looked around at his crew. These were hard men and women, veterans of dozens of battles, but he could see tears in some of their eyes. "Orders, sir?" his first officer asked. "Load every weapon we have," Ron said. "Full battle configuration. We're going to war." Similar scenes played out across human space. On the frontier world of New Texas, Colonel Mary Price watched her infantry units load onto transport ships. Her soldiers had been fighting border skirmishes for months, but this was different. This was personal. "Where are we going, Colonel?" Sergeant Jim Murphy asked. Mary looked at the transport ships filling with soldiers. "We're going to show the hegemony what happens when you attack a hospital ship," she said. At the Luna shipyards, ships that had been under construction for months were rushed to completion. Workers put in 18-hour shifts to get every possible vessel ready for combat. The yard supervisor, Engineer Lisa Chang, pushed her teams to their limits. "Why the rush?" one of her workers asked. "These ships aren't supposed to be ready for another month." Lisa showed him the recording from the sanctuary. When it finished, the worker's face was hard with anger. "We'll have them ready in a week," he promised. Across the galaxy, human merchant ships received orders to report to the nearest military base for conversion to warships. Passenger liners were fitted with weapons. Cargo haulers were loaded with Marines. Even small pleasure craft were armed and prepared for battle. The hegemony had wanted to see what humans would do when pushed too far. They were about to find out. Admiral Harrison stood in the main command center watching reports flow in from across human space. Numbers that should have been impossible scrolled across his screens. "Current fleet strength?" he asked. 3,000. 217 ships and counting, Karen reported. "That's more than we've ever assembled before. More than we ever thought possible." "And they're all volunteers," another officer added. "Not one single unit has refused orders. Some are actually requesting priority deployment." Pete nodded. He had expected nothing less. Humans could disagree about many things, but they all understood what the sanctuary had represented. It was the best of what they could be: healers, protectors, guardians of the innocent. The hegemony had attacked that. They had murdered it in cold blood. Now they would face the consequences. "Time to full mobilization?" Pete asked. 72 hours, sir, maybe less." Pete looked at the star map showing human space. Red dots marked the gathering fleets. Blue lines showed their planned routes to hegemony territory. It looked like a storm system building strength before it struck. The hegemony had called human mercy a weakness. They were about to learn the difference between mercy and weakness. They were about to discover that the same compassion that made humans heal their enemies could drive them to terrible acts when that compassion was attacked. They had killed the sanctuary and everyone aboard her. Now the stars themselves would mourn. Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan had never seen so many ships in one place. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Vengeance, watching through the massive viewport as human warships continued to arrive at the Sol rallying point. They came, in groups of dozens, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Battleships, destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and support vessels, every type of military ship that humans had ever built. The gathering had been going on for 2 days, and still they came. "Ma'am, we're getting reports from the outer sensor grid," her communications officer said. "The 7th Colonial Fleet just dropped out of hyperspace. That's another 200 ships." Kate nodded, but her eyes stayed fixed on the view outside. The assembled fleet stretched in every direction, covering millions of cubic kilometers of space. The ships were so numerous and so large that they actually blocked the light from distant stars. From Earth's surface, people were calling it the Great Darkening. "Current count?" she asked. 3,412 ships, came the reply. "And we're still getting arrival confirmations from frontier units." Kate had been in the military for 30 years. She had commanded fleets in the border wars, fought in the Centauri Rebellion, and led the defense of New Geneva. But she had never imagined anything like this. No one had. "Ma'am," her tactical officer spoke up, "the UES Memorial just launched. From Earth orbit, she's carrying the new memorial wall." Kate turned to look at the tactical display. The Memorial was a massive transport ship that had been quickly converted for this mission. Its cargo hold contained a single enormous wall made of black stone. Carved into that stone were the names of every person who had died aboard the sanctuary. 2,043 names. The Memorial took its place among the other ships, and Kate could see crews from nearby vessels turning to look at it. Everyone knew what it carried. Everyone understood what those names meant. Commander Alex Stone approached her from the navigation station. He was an old friend who had served with her for 15 years. His face was grim as he handed her a data pad. "Kate, you need to see the latest intelligence reports," he said quietly. She took the pad and read quickly. Her expression darkened with each line. "The hegemony is calling it a great victory," she said. "They're telling their people that they've proven human weakness by destroying a hospital ship." "It gets worse," Alex said. "They're planning a celebration. War Commander Thexvar is being promoted for his brilliant strategy of attacking non-combatants." Kate felt her hands tighten on the data pad. Around them, the bridge crew continued their work, but she could see the tension in their movements. Everyone had read the reports. Everyone knew what the enemy was saying. "Have all the ship names been approved?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. The rechristening ceremonies are complete." Kate looked back out at the fleet. Many of the ships now bore new names painted in fresh letters on their hulls. The UES Lisa Morgan, commanded by Captain Ron Baker. The UES Jake Phillips, carrying 2,000 Marines. The UES Amy Carter, a communications ship that would broadcast the sanctuary's final message to every world they encountered. Each name was a promise. Each ship was a memorial that could fight back. "Ma'am, incoming transmission from Earth Fleet Command," the communications officer announced. "Admiral Harrison wants to address the fleet." "Put it on the main screen," Kate ordered. The viewport changed to show Admiral Pete Harrison in his office on Earth. Behind him, she could see the lights of the command center where staff officers worked around the clock to coordinate the largest military operation in human history. "To all fleet commanders and ship captains," Harrison began. In 6 hours, we will depart for hegemony space. I want to be clear about our mission. His voice carried to every ship in the fleet, to every soldier and sailor who had volunteered for this operation. We are not going as conquerors. We are not going for territory or resources. We are going because 2 days ago, the hegemony crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. They attacked the innocent. They murdered healers. They declared war on mercy itself. Kate could see other ships through the viewport, their crews gathered around screens to watch this address. The enemy believes that our compassion makes us weak. They believe that because we choose to heal rather than hurt, we will not fight when we must. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Harrison paused, and Kate could see the weight of command in his face. This was not a decision he had made lightly. Every species in the galaxy will be watching what happens next. They will see what humans do when our most sacred values are attacked. They will learn that mercy and weakness are not the same thing. They will understand that those who attack the healers must face the warriors. Another pause. When Harrison spoke again, his voice was filled with quiet fury. The hegemony wanted to see what happens when you push humans too far. Show them. The transmission ended. Kate looked around the bridge at her officers. They were good people, professional soldiers who understood the cost of what they were about to do. But she could see the determination in their faces. They had all watched the Sanctuary's final transmission. They had all seen what the hegemony did to doctors and nurses who were trying to save lives. All ships, prepare for departure, she announced over the fleet communication channel. Across the assembled armada, engines began to warm up. Navigation computers calculated jump coordinates. Weapons systems ran final diagnostics. 3,000 ships prepared to move as one. "Ma'am," the sensor officer called out, "I'm reading gravitational distortions. The fleet is so large that our combined mass is affecting local space-time." Kate was not surprised. They had known this might happen. When you put this many massive objects in one place, physics demanded attention. "Any problems with navigation?" she asked. "No, ma'am. If anything, it might work in our favor. The distortions will be detectable across the galaxy. Everyone will. Know we're coming?" Kate smiled grimly. "Good. Let the galaxy watch. Let them see what humans could accomplish when they work together. Let them understand that mercy was a choice, not a weakness, and that those who attacked it faced consequences. Beyond imagination, all ships report ready for hyperspace jump," the navigation officer announced. Kate took one last look at Earth through the viewport. Her homeworld looked small and peaceful from here, a blue jewel hanging in the darkness. But she knew that, down on the surface, people were watching the sky and praying for their fleet. They were counting on her to make things right, to show the galaxy that some lines could not be crossed, to prove that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers, but their willingness to stand up for what was right. "All ships," she announced, "begin hyperspace jump. Destination, hegemony space. 3,000 ships vanished from Sol system in a flash of light that could be seen from the surface of Earth. The gravitational waves from their departure rippled through space, carrying the news to every civilization in the galaxy. Humanity was coming. And when they arrived, the stars themselves would tremble. The hyperspace tunnel was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 3,000 human ships traveled together through the twisted dimensions of faster-than-light space, their combined mass and energy creating ripples that spread across the universe. On distant worlds, scientists watched their instruments in amazement as gravitational waves announced the passage of the largest fleet in galactic history. Captain Jenny Wright commanded the heavy cruiser UES Righteous Fury, one of hundreds of ships in the vast formation. She had been in hyperspace for 6 hours, but the journey to hegemony territory would take 3 days. 3 days to think about what they were going to do when they arrived. Her ship was silent. The usual chatter between crew members had stopped after the first day. Everyone knew where they were going and why. The weight of their mission pressed down on them like a physical thing. Jenny walked through the corridors of her ship, checking on her crew. In the weapons bay, Chief Petty Officer Mark Davis was running final checks on the torpedo systems. His movements were precise and mechanical, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "How are we looking, Chief?" she asked. Mark looked up from his control panel. "All weapons at 100%, Captain. We're loaded for full combat operations." He paused, then added quietly, "I've been in the service for 20 years. Never thought I'd be part of something like this." Jenny nodded. "None of us did. But after what happened to the sanctuary—" "Those doctors never hurt anyone," Mark said, his voice hard. "They spent their lives saving people, even saved hegemony warriors who were trying to kill them. And look how they were repaid." Jenny had watched the sanctuary's final transmission a dozen times. Each viewing made her angrier. Captain Lisa Morgan and her crew had died doing what humans did best, showing mercy to everyone, even their enemies. The hegemony had murdered them for it. She continued her rounds through the ship. In the engineering section, Lieutenant Sarah Bell was monitoring the hyperspace drive. The young officer looked up as Jenny approached. "Captain, I'm reading some unusual energy patterns from the other ships in the fleet," Sarah reported. "I think it's because we're traveling so close together. The combined hyperspace fields are creating resonance effects." "Any problems with our systems?" Jenny asked. "No, ma'am. If anything, it's making us more stable. It's like we're all locked together, moving as one giant ship instead of thousands of individual vessels." Jenny found that oddly appropriate. They were moving as one fleet, one purpose, one promise to the dead of the sanctuary that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. In the communications section, Lieutenant Tom Baker was monitoring reports from across the fleet. His station was quiet. Admiral Harrison had ordered complete communications silence during the journey. No messages to Earth, no chatter between ships, no negotiations with anyone. The galaxy would know humans were coming, but they would not know their intentions until it was too late. "Any word from home?" Jenny asked. Tom shook his head. "Nothing outgoing, Captain. But I am picking up some interesting transmissions on the long-range sensors. Sounds like the whole galaxy is talking about us." "Let me hear it." Tom adjusted his controls, and the bridge filled with alien voices speaking in dozens of languages. The universal translator worked to convert them to English. Human fleet unprecedented in size. Gravitational distortions detected across 7 sectors. Emergency session of the Galactic Council called. Zephyrian Senate recalls all fleets to home systems. Trade routes closing in advance of human arrival. Jenny listened to the reports with grim satisfaction. The galaxy was afraid. Good. They should be. For too long, civilized species had ignored the brutality of empires like the hegemony. They had allowed hospital ships to be attacked, medical personnel to be murdered, wounded patients to be executed. Now they would see what happened when humans decided that enough was enough. "Captain," Tom said quietly, "there's something else. I'm picking up transmissions from hegemony space. They're celebrating." Jenny's hands clenched into fists. "Put it on speaker." The bridge filled with harsh hegemony voices, their words translated by the computer. Great victory over human weakness. War Commander Thexvar to be honored for brilliant strategy. Medical ship destruction proves human cowardice. Celebration. Planned for conquered human doctors. Jenny had heard enough. Turn it off. The bridge fell silent again. Her crew had heard the transmissions too, and she could see their faces hardening with anger. The hegemony was not just proud of what they had done. They were celebrating it. They were treating the murder of doctors and patients like a great military achievement. She walked to the main viewport and looked out at the swirling energies of hyperspace. Somewhere in that cosmic storm, 3,000 other human ships were traveling alongside her. Each one carried soldiers and sailors who had volunteered for this mission. Each one was a promise that the Sanctuary's crew had not died in vain. "Captain," her first officer spoke from behind her, "I've been thinking about what we're going to do when we arrive." Commander Bill Foster was a good man, a career officer who had served with distinction in every conflict for the past 15 years. He was also someone who understood the weight of what they were about to do. "What's on your mind, Bill?" Jenny asked. "The hegemony has a huge military. Their ships are individually more advanced than ours. In a straight fight, they might have the advantage." Jenny turned to face him. "But this won't be a straight fight, will it?" Bill shook his head. "No, ma'am. They're expecting maybe a few dozen ships seeking revenge. They have no idea what's actually coming. When 3,000 human vessels drop out of hyperspace in their home system, it will be the largest military force ever assembled," Jenny finished. "Larger than anything in galactic history. The question is, what do we do with that force?" Jenny looked back out at hyperspace. She thought about Captain Lisa Morgan's final words, about Dr. Jake Phillips trying to save patients even as his ship died around him, about the children who had trusted human doctors to protect them. "We show them the difference between mercy and weakness," she said. "We show them what happens when you attack the one thing that makes us most human, our willingness to help others." She turned back to Bill. "And we make sure that no one ever attacks a hospital ship again." The ship continued its journey through hyperspace, part of the vast formation that was crossing the galaxy like a dark tide. Behind them, Earth and the human colonies waited for news. Ahead of them, the hegemony celebrated their victory over human mercy. Neither side would have to wait much longer. In 18 hours, the human fleet would arrive at the hegemony capital system. When they did, the galaxy would discover that humanity's greatest strength was not their compassion. It was their refusal to let that compassion be destroyed. The dark transit continued, carrying 3,000 ships toward a reckoning that would echo through history. War Commander Thexvar was enjoying the greatest day of his life when the universe turned dark. He stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Hegemon's Will, watching preparations for the victory celebration. Below him, the hegemony homeworld of Korthak Prime sparkled with lights as millions of citizens prepared to honor his great triumph over human weakness. The destruction of the medical ship had been perfect, quick, efficient, and it had sent exactly the message he wanted to send. Humans talked about mercy and compassion, but when faced with real strength, they had died like the weaklings they were. "War Commander," his communications officer reported, "the celebration broadcasts are ready to begin. The entire Empire will hear about your victory over the human hospital ship." Thexvar's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Soon, his name would be remembered as the leader who had proven human mercy was nothing but cowardice. He would be the one who showed the galaxy that the hegemony was the strongest force in space. "Begin the broadcast," he ordered, but before the officer could comply, the ship's alert systems began screaming. "War Commander, the sensor operator called out in panic. "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Something is coming out of jump." "Space." Thexvar moved to the sensor station, his good mood beginning to fade. "How many ships?" The operator stared at his instruments in disbelief. I can't get an accurate count, sir. The sensors are showing thousands of contacts." "Thousands?" Thexvar's voice was sharp. "That's impossible. Check your instruments." "Sir, I've run diagnostics 3 times. The readings are accurate. We have massive hyperspace distortions across the entire outer system." Thexvar looked at the main display screen. Space around Korthak Prime had been empty moments before. Now it showed expanding ripples of energy as ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace. Human ships. "Get me a count," he ordered, his voice losing its confidence. The numbers kept climbing on the tactical display. 100, 500, 1,000, 2,000. "War Commander." The sensor operator's voice was barely a whisper. "Final count. 3,412 vessels, all human military signatures." The command deck fell silent. 3,000 ships. It was impossible. Humans did not have that many warships. No one did. "Sir," another officer spoke. They're not attacking. They're just deploying." Thexvar watched the tactical display in growing horror. The human fleet was spreading out across the system in perfect formation. They moved with precision that spoke of careful planning and flawless coordination. This was not a hasty revenge mission. This was a military operation on a scale the galaxy had never seen. "How long until they reach the homeworld?" he asked. "At current speed, 6 hours. "But, sir, they're not heading directly for us. They're taking positions around the system." Thexvar stared at the display. The humans were not rushing in for a quick strike. They were surrounding the entire system, cutting off all escape routes. But why? What were they planning? Then the stars began to disappear. It started slowly. A few stars in the constellation of the Hunter's Belt flickered and went out. Then more stars vanished, as if something enormous was moving between them and the planet. "What's happening to the stars?" Thexvar demanded. The sensor operator checked his instruments with shaking hands. "Sir, the human fleet is so large that it's actually blocking starlight. They're creating an artificial eclipse." Thexvar looked out the command deck window. Sure enough, the familiar star patterns were disappearing one by one as human ships moved into position. The night sky of Korthak Prime was going dark. On the planet's surface, billions of hegemony citizens looked up in growing fear as their stars vanished. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication networks as people demanded to know what was happening. "War Commander," the communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It's on all frequencies." "Put it on screen." The display filled with the image of a human male in military uniform. His face was calm, but his eyes held something that made Thexvar's blood run cold. "This is Admiral Pete Harrison of the Earth Fleet Command," the human said. "I am speaking to War Commander Thexvar and the leadership of the Hegemony Empire." Thexvar found his voice. "Human, you are in violation of Hegemony space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Admiral Harrison's expression did not change. 3 days ago, you attacked the hospital ship UHMS Sanctuary. You murdered 2,043 medical personnel and patients. You fired on clearly marked non-combatants operating under galactic medical neutrality treaties. That ship was weak, Thexvar snarled. Its crew were cowards hiding behind their medical status. Those doctors and nurses spent their lives saving. Others? Harrison replied. They had treated your own wounded warriors with the same care they gave to human patients. They asked for nothing in return but the right to heal the injured. More stars disappeared as the human fleet continued its deployment. Half the night sky was now black. You called their mercy weakness, Harrison continued. You said that compassion was cowardice. You believed that because we choose to heal rather than hurt, we would not defend ourselves. Thexavar looked around, his command deck. His officers were staring at the tactical display in shock. The human fleet had completed its deployment. They had surrounded the entire system in a sphere of warships so vast it defied imagination. You wanted to see what happens when you push humans too far, Admiral Harrison said. Look around you. Look at your night sky. We have brought 3,000 ships to darken your stars. We have assembled the largest military force in galactic history. The communication channel switched to show the view from outside Korthak Prime. The planet hung in space surrounded by a shell of human warships. They stretched in every direction, blocking the light from the system's star and creating an artificial night that covered half the world. This is what human anger looks like, Harrison said. This is what happens when you attack mercy itself. Thexvar tried to maintain his composure, but fear was growing in his chest. You cannot intimidate the hegemony. We are warriors. We do not fear death. Death? Harrison's voice carried a cold amusement. War Commander, you still don't understand. We didn't come here to kill you quickly. We came here to show you something. The image switched back to Harrison's face. You attacked a hospital ship because you thought human compassion was weakness. You murdered doctors because you believed mercy was cowardice. You celebrated the deaths of healers because you wanted to prove your strength. Admiral Harrison leaned forward, and Thexavar saw something in the human's eyes that made him step back from the screen. You were wrong about human mercy, War Commander, but you made a much bigger mistake. You assumed that because we choose compassion, we are incapable of wrath. The communication channel went silent. Around Korthak Prime, 3,000 human warships maintained their positions. The artificial eclipse continued, keeping half the planet in darkness. On the surface, billions of hegemony citizens huddled in their homes, watching their stars disappear and wondering what the humans planned to do next. Thexvar stood on his command deck, surrounded by the largest fleet he had ever seen, and, for the first time in his life, he understood true fear. The humans had not come for a quick victory. They had come to teach a lesson that the galaxy would never forget. And that lesson was just beginning. The battle for Korthak Prime lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. It was not a battle in any traditional sense. It was a demonstration of what happened when humanity's infinite capacity for mercy was matched by their infinite capacity for wrath. Admiral Pete Harrison watched from the bridge of his flagship as the hegemony fleet launched their attack. 200 of their best warships charged toward the human lines, their weapons blazing with desperate fury. War Commander Thexvar was leading the assault himself, screaming orders about hegemony honor and human weakness. The human response was swift and overwhelming. For every hegemony ship, there were 15 human vessels. The aliens had superior individual technology, but they were drowning in an ocean of human firepower. Admiral Captain Jenny Wright reported from the UES Righteous Fury. The enemy flagship is heavily damaged. War Commander Thexvar is requesting surrender terms. Harrison looked at the tactical display. The hegemony fleet was broken, their ships drifting helplessly or limping away from the battle. It was over. Bring him aboard, Harrison ordered. But first, Deploy medical ships to assist hegemony survivors. The bridge crew looked at him in surprise. After what the hegemony had done to the sanctuary, many had expected a much harsher response. "Sir," his tactical officer asked carefully, "are you sure?" "They attacked our hospital ship." Harrison turned to face his crew. "They attacked our hospital ship because they believed mercy was weakness. If we abandon mercy now, we prove them right." Within an hour, human medical ships were moving among the wreckage of the hegemony fleet. Human doctors and nurses worked frantically to save alien lives, just as their colleagues on the sanctuary had done. Some of the wounded hegemony warriors tried to refuse help, confused by the humans' willingness to heal their enemies. Dr. Patricia Neal had survived the sanctuary's destruction by being off-ship during the attack. She now commanded the medical response from aboard the hospital ship UES Never Again. As she worked to save a badly wounded hegemony pilot, she explained what she was doing. "My friends died 3 days ago because they were trying to save your people," she told the injured alien. "They died because they believed every life was worth saving, even the lives of their enemies." The hegemony pilot stared at her with confusion. "Why do you help me? I would have killed you if I could." Patricia continued working on his wounds. "Because this is who we are. This is what your war commander attacked. This is what mercy looks like." Meanwhile, War Commander Thexvar was brought aboard Harrison's flagship under heavy guard. The alien leader had been injured in the battle, but he refused medical treatment. He stood in the Admiral's ready room, his gray skin pale with shock and pain. "You have won," Thexvar said stiffly. "Kill me and be done with it." Harrison shook his head. "I'm not going to kill you, War Commander. I'm going to show you something." He activated a wall screen that displayed video feeds from across the system. Thexvar could see human medical ships rescuing hegemony survivors, human doctors treating alien wounds, human nurses comforting frightened enemy soldiers. "Do you see that?" Harrison asked. "Those are the same people you called weak. Those are the humans you said were cowards, because they choose to heal instead of hurt." Thexvar watched the screens in silence. He saw a human surgeon spending 6 hours to save the life of a hegemony warrior. He saw nurses singing alien lullabies to wounded enemy soldiers. He saw medical teams working without rest to help people who had been trying to kill them hours before. "I don't understand," Thexvar said finally. "You have the power to destroy us. Why do you show mercy to your enemies?" Harrison looked at the alien commander with something that might have been pity. "Because mercy is not weakness, War Commander. Mercy is strength. It takes more courage to save a life than to take one. It takes more wisdom to heal than to hurt." He gestured to the screens showing human medical teams at work. "You attacked the sanctuary because you thought our compassion made us vulnerable. You murdered doctors and nurses because you believed kindness was cowardice. You were wrong about everything." Harrison moved closer to Thexvar, and the alien saw something in the human's eyes that made him take a step back. "We brought 3,000 ships to your homeworld not because we are weak, but because we are strong. Strong enough to cross the galaxy for revenge, strong enough to darken your stars and break your fleets, and strong enough to show mercy even to those who showed none to us." The communication system activated, and Captain Ron Baker's voice filled the room. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from 12 hegemony sectors. Their military commanders are requesting immediate ceasefire. Terms." Harrison nodded. "Accept their surrenders. Begin humanitarian aid to all hegemony worlds, and broadcast the surrender on all galactic frequencies." He turned back to Thexvar. Your empire is finished, War Commander, but your people will live. They will be fed, healed, and protected under human authority. They will learn what civilized behavior looks like. Thexvar stared at him. You're going to rebuild our worlds? After what we did? We're going to rebuild your worlds because of what you did, Harrison corrected. The galaxy needs to see that humans fight not for conquest, but for justice. We came here to end a threat to mercy itself. Now we'll show everyone what mercy can accomplish. 6 months later, War Commander Thexvar stood in the memorial garden that had been built on the site of the old Hegemony military headquarters. 2,043 trees grew there, one for each person who had died aboard the sanctuary. At the center of the garden stood a statue of Captain Lisa Morgan, her hand extended in a gesture of healing. Thexvar was no longer a war commander. The Hegemony military had been disbanded, its warriors retrained as emergency responders and medical assistants. He now worked in a human-run hospital, helping to treat the same kind of wounded soldiers he had once commanded. Dr. Patricia Neal approached him as he stood before the memorial. She had been appointed as the head of medical services for the former Hegemony worlds, overseeing the transformation of a warrior culture into something more peaceful. How are you adjusting to the work? She asked. Thexvar looked down at his hands. They had once held weapons designed to kill. Now they held medical instruments designed to heal. It is difficult, but I am beginning to understand what you humans call mercy. Patricia nodded. It took losing everything for you to learn it. I hope others won't need to pay such a high price. They stood together in the memorial garden, former enemies now working toward the same goal. Around them, alien children played while their parents worked alongside human doctors and teachers. The transformation was slow, but it was real. In the distance, a new hospital ship was visible in orbit. The UES Never Again was even larger than the Sanctuary had been, carrying twice as many medical personnel and serving patients from dozens of species. Its hull bore the same red crosses that had marked the Sanctuary, but now those symbols were protected by the most powerful fleet in galactic history. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity's mercy was not weakness, and those who attacked, it would face consequences beyond imagination. But they had also learned that human wrath, terrible as it was, always served the cause of justice. The war was over. The healing had begun. And throughout the galaxy, hospital ships sailed under human protection, their red crosses shining like beacons of hope among the stars. Never again would healers be murdered for their compassion. Never again would mercy be mistaken for weakness. The humans had made sure of that, and the universe was better for it.